Before our eyes, a faint purple orb slowly appeared and bobbed up and down in the air, looking to us. The orb that had haunted me and was expelled from me floated over the dead body of the Demon Lord, as if it had been there the entire time. You. The orb moved in a circle about the Demon Lord's body, letting the faint trail behind it temporarily draw a circle in the air. As it turned to its spot, it released a pulse of light. The light slowly drifted towards Diana, impacting her chest and making her glow a bit before the light faded away. Confused, Diana stared at the spirit, trying to figure out what it had done to her. Was it an attack? Slowly, Diana became wide-eyed at its familiarity. With a shaky hand, Diana reached out towards the orb, lost emotion in her eyes as she kept her sights on the spirit. I knew it was Oribel.
Oh, Oribel.
I stared at Diana in shock. It had a name? How did Diana know the spirit at all? It was like she was grasping at straws. How could Diana have known who it was? The orb floated forward, stopping in front of the Demon Lord's corpse as Diana took a step towards it.
Hi, Azair.
Hey. I was wrong. Diana hit the nail on the head with its name and seemed to be acquainted with it. Diana took a couple more steps forward before dropping to her knees in the middle of the hall. I watched as tears began to stream down her face and her body began to quake. The orb slowly floated over to Diana and hovered just within arm's reach of her. Diana's hand shakily lifted up past her chest and over her mouth.
Oh, Oribel.
It's okay. It's okay, big sister.
Big sister? Diana was her... Diana suddenly let out a tearful gasp before reaching forward and taking the orb into her arms, somehow pulling the orb into a tight embrace. The orb seemed to shimmer in the hug it was in, but didn't seem to react in any other way. Diana, however, became a weeping mess, crying and shaking while holding Oribel close.
Oribel! Oribel!
I couldn't believe it. The spirit was Oribel, Diana's sister? What kind of coincidence was that? How did Diana not know herself? How did Oribel not tell me? It obviously knew Diana just from how they were embracing. Still, the sight of Diana in mournful tears gripped to my heart. Diana lost her sister and suddenly was able to speak to her once more, even after Oribel's death. It was as if fate wanted to apologize for taking her family away. I almost became a crying mess myself. It was a very tearful reunion after a dramatic battle. I didn't know how to feel in the situation we were in. Diana didn't seem to care as she continued to cry and hold Oribel. Erik wrapped an arm around me, comforting me as I wiped my ears and my ears. I wiped my ears. I think I was expecting to say tears, and then the E threw me off, and that's why ears happened. Forget the ears. I wiped my eyes and tried to avoid weeping. Diana, however, didn't seem to care about the tears running down her face.
This is the first time I've heard you cry, sister.
I'm sorry. I tried to save you, but
It's okay. The Demon Lord did this to me.
It suddenly made sense. Oribel was an unborn baby, so it wouldn't have known its name. The Demon Lord was the one who killed her, so the puzzle pieces were connecting perfectly. Although why did she respond to Oribel if she didn't know about her own name? Oribel then phased out of Diana's hands, making the demoness gasp and look up at the orb. Oribel, however, floated in place in front of Diana as she continued to speak.
The Demon Lord made me find the human.
Oh, really? What? Oribel was working for the Demon Lord? She helped the imps bring me to the demon world?
Oribel, you were in the human all along? Why not just tell me? Why?
He made me. But now I have nowhere to go.
Oh, Oribel.
Yeah, I'm like, I think this is supposed to be very tearful, but I feel like I've had this bad feeling, like Oribel's the final boss kind of thing. Like there's something not quite, this isn't really Oribel or something or other. Not fully. Something in the air didn't seem right. Something about Oribel became off, and I couldn't place my finger on it. The more I stared, the more concerned I became, and the heavier the nervousness in my gut grew.
Isaiah, I love you so much. But
there's the but of it all. The air seemed to freeze, and the room became still as Oribel floated back towards the body of the Demon Lord. As Oribel stopped, she began to glow a dark red and purple color.
I can't forgive you.
All at once, the orb flashed and vanished into thin air, only a misty gasp present in the aftermath.
Oribel!
We looked around, trying to pin down where she had gone. As the Demon Lord's hand suddenly lifted up and slammed into the ground, we shot our heads back at his corpse, seeing it begin to animate. Oh, this is not a good thing at all. The Demon Lord slammed his other hand to the ground and began to push himself up, curling his shoulders over and using whatever strength he had and getting onto his knees and eventually his feet. What? Oh, that's disturbing. The Demon Lord's body stood up and steadied itself on the ground on its 2 feet, heavy and void of life. What was happening? How could this be? As the Demon Lord's head lifted to look up at Diana, I gasped. His eyes were glossed over in a dark purple, almost black color. Blood continued to pour from the wounds of the body, but the body continued to move as if it had a small breath of life. His mouth dropped and began to mold itself into forming words, dead and echoey with Oribel's voice seeping through.
You let him kill me. You let him kill mother and father.
Oribel!
You let the human live and let us die. I can never forgive you.
The voice of the Demon Lord and Oribel seemed to fuse in a dissonant harmony as the bodies slowly began to march towards the unmoving Diana. My mind screamed for her to move and run, but Diana didn't seem to be immobile at the incoming danger. Diana, move! She remained in place, shocked and frozen at what her sister had said and done. I could barely make out her hair and body shuddering in natural fear, but she wouldn't move at all. Grab that girl and get out of here. There was no way I was going to let Oribel hurt her, sister or not. I rushed forward and grabbed Diana by the horns, pulling her back as fast as I could. Why the horns? Diana gripped onto my hand, digging her nails into my skin, but I didn't care. I needed to bring her away from the incoming enemy. As I dragged her back, Oribel watched, unamused by my intrusion. I could only glare back, despite Diana flailing in my hands. She wouldn't take her away. I wouldn't let her. I finally released Diana's horns and stepped forward, placing myself between the 2 sisters, as weird as that sounds. I won't let you hurt her. Oribel loomed towards us, filling me with dread. The stench of the Demon Lord's corpse became unbearable, despite not being dead long. I still had no energy to fight, the realization making me step back from the Undead Demon Lord.
You hurt me.
Hurt me.
Now I'll hurt you.
Oribel picked up the Demon Lord's broken blade parts and slammed them together, fusing them back into one sword with her energy. How is that possible? She was a spirit. Oribel then started to charge at us, raising the sword barely over Erik's and my head. I prepared to defend, but was blocked by the back of Erik's head in a wave of ethereal tendrils. All at once, the tendrils grabbed hold of the sword and forced it away. Around Erik's body was a deep aura of red and purple mist, swirling in the air and wrapping around his summoned tendrils. As he stepped forward, Oribel surprisingly stepped back.
I won't let you hurt the one I love.
With a snarl, Oribel lunged at Erik, trying to wrap her arms around him, but was pushed away by Erik's tendrils. Oribel and Erik charged at one another, Oribel gripping to Erik's outstretched tendrils and began to push at each other. The wounds on the Demon Lord's body began to open and bleed further, causing it to quake as it pushed against Erik's strength.
You won't last long in that body. Give up.
Shut up! Shut up, shut up, shut up!
With her screams, Oribel knocked away the tendrils before her and managed to get close to Erik, but not without impaling herself on traps Erik placed around him, which caused spikes to shoot up and into the rotten body of the Demon Lord. Disgusted at the sight and smell, Erik used his tendrils to shove Oribel off of him and towards the opposite end of the room, where Oribel slid and rolled against the marble, painting it red and black with blood. Quickly, Oribel jumped back up and began to howl and scream, her cries filling the room and making it quake violently. Gah! I held my head, trying to block out the sound, but her cries began to fill my head with dissonant pain. Erik, in defiance, sprayed a volley of spikes at her, all landed on target. The spikes remained in the corpse, but Oribel continued to move, desperate to fight back with everything she had. What was wrong with her? How was she able to keep going? Were spirits really that powerful? I quickly grabbed Diana, pulling her up to her feet, and ran to the corner of the room, needing to be in the room still to help Erik, but desperate to keep Oribel away from Diana.
Oribel!
Diana began to flail and fight back, but I dug my nails into Diana's sides, forcing her back with gritted teeth. Diana! Move! As Diana's back hit the corner of the room, I could hear Erik release a grunt of pain, causing me to look over my shoulder to see what had happened. Erik, having knocked away a slash from Oribel's sword, unfortunately couldn't block a fist from sending Erik flying up the wall. Eric's body slammed into the stone and he fell onto the ground, gasping for air and curled over himself from the pain. Erik! I instantly rushed over and knelt at Eric's side, wrapping an arm over him as he slowly began to rise back up.
I'm fine, princess.
I shook my head and looked to Oribel, seeing her slowly make her way towards us. I was certain that the body she was using was drained of any blood, yet she managed to keep it moving with her own energy. It was morbidly disgusting to see, but I was forced to bear witness as it came closer to where we were. What are we going to do? Erik and I looked to each other, desperate to find an answer in each other's eyes. However, one finally appeared in my mind. According to Diana, when I had Oribel within me, I was overflowing with energy. If I was still standing, then I still had some left. There wasn't enough for me to fight, but there was enough to give to Erik to possibly help him. I suddenly grabbed Eric's face and kissed him, willing my energy into his body. Erik, despite naturally accepting it, stared wide-eyed at me in surprise. Perfect response. I didn't want to pass out, so I pulled away when I began to feel lightheaded. I hoped and prayed that it was enough energy to end this fight, so I smiled at Erik, nodding to him. Finish this so we can go home. I quickly collapsed onto my hands, panting for air. The room began to spin, but I had to shake it off. I had to see this through. Erik gazed at me before nodding and turning to Oribel, who was halfway across the room now. Slowly, Erik rose to his feet and summoned his mob of tendrils, each dancing and waving like angry snakes in the air.
You've been in my way for long enough, spirit.
Walking forward, Erik lashed out his tendrils at Oribel, whipping and snapping at the body she was possessing and forcing it back, despite her attempts to block and force them away. Every so often a spike would fly from Erik's ring of tendrils, piercing into Oribel like a skewer. As Erik cast the Demon Lord's sword, he reached down and picked it up, surprisingly with ease. I could barely stand, gripping onto the wall as I watched Erik lift the sword to his side.
You possessed my wife, brought her to this world, and dared to attack her? All because of what my father did to you. Pitiful.
Oribel let out a threatening and frightening shout, lurching forward to try and tackle Erik, but was pushed away by the Demon Lord's blade and Erik's tendrils, causing her to knock into and collapse one of the nearby pillars. Oribel slowly rose, pushing the debris off of her, before glaring hard at Erik. Erik glared back in kind before raising his father's blade up into his side, preparing to charge forward with it to plunge into her.
I will send you to purgatory and free you from your suffering.
Ooh. With one last cry, Erik ran and thrust the Demon Lord's sword forward into Oribel, causing her to cry out. One last scream. The room began to vibrate and quake, causing me to cover my head. However, Erik released the hilt of the sword and rushed back to me. A bright light filled the room, blinding Erik and I. Erik gripped onto me, trying to cover my body with his, but the white color of the flash invaded my vision. Silence slowly consumed the air as my world became blank, like a canvas. I looked up at last to see the spirit orb bobbing up and down in the air. What does it take to get rid of you?
You saved me! Thank you! You freed me at last!
Wait, what? Oribel. The orb spun around itself once, releasing a small giggle. It seemed overjoyed despite what had just happened earlier. Had Oribel been under some sort of corruption? Oh, good grief.
I can finally go home!
Oribel.
Now you can have a proper reunion at last, I guess. Unless you're faking it again, in which case, well done. You deserve an award. I turned my head to see Diana slowly walking forward to be by my side, staring at the orb in both sadness and relief. Oribel floated over to hover in front of Diana, a soft line of sadness in her own voice.
I'm sorry, big sister,
It's alright. You're free now.
Diana wrapped her arms around Oribel, laying her cheek softly on the orb as it flickered a warm glow. The air was calm, and the love between Diana and Oribel seemed to hum with the orb's light. However, Diana was still alive, and I could tell that this was her final goodbye to the sister she never got to meet. It was heartwarming as well as bittersweet, but Diana deserved proper closure with the sister she grew to love.
Tell Mother and Father that I'm alright, okay?
I will.
Oribel?
Oh, you gotta be kidding. Diana and I suddenly looked into the light around us, hearing a man's voice. Oribel spun around in a circle, letting out a happy gasp.
Father? Father!
Oribel quickly left Diana's arms and began to fly into the bright light, but stopped and spoke once more.
Take care of the world, okay? You're everyone's mother now, sister.
Diana grinned and chuckled a bit, stray tears falling down the sides of her face.
I'll do my best.
Bye-bye, human!
Bye, you crazy child orb. Bye! I couldn't help waving as the orb finally faded away into the light. That was a journey. As the world returned me to the Great Hall, I found myself still wrapped in Erik's arms. I looked up to see him staring down at me in worry, like I had passed out. Erik?
Love, are you alright?
I nodded. I was alright now. Battle was over and I was free to return home. Great sacrifices were made, but it was all over now. I was going home. Diana, who had been sitting in the corner of the room, braced her knees to her chest, taking in what had happened as well. I was positive that she was truly there with me to say goodbye to Oribel, so she had to recuperate.
Sarah.
At her voice, a soft flash of light pulsed in front of her before revealing Sarah out of breath.
My lady!
Oh, you too. Despite being out of breath, Sarah quickly dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around Diana.
I was on my way to tell you! We've won! We forced the enemy to dissolve and surrender and...
Shut up.
Sarah flinched before Diana wrapped her arms around his chest and pulled him tightly against her.
Just hold me.
Daw. Sarah stared down at Diana before nodding and embracing her, resting his head against hers comfortingly. I could barely hear soft sobbing from her, but I was glad to know that Sarah was there for her. I looked up at Erik and smiled before kissing him, relishing in the victory of the rebellion and the release of my curse. I was finally going home. It was over. The war was finally over. As the smoke cleared, we were victorious. The soldiers left standing were the ones to cheer in victory. The sky became littered with the howls and cries of the joyful and happy. The tyranny of the Demon Lord had ended. But what now? Home was now possible. We could go back to the human world and we could live our lives as we wanted. It was something I desperately wanted, and yet my body was not ready to make the journey just yet. We had to celebrate the success of the war, after all. Okay, so this is the feast. I'll follow her. I'm gonna make sure that she doesn't get murderized. See what she has to say this time. I followed, curious as to where she was going. I made sure to remain quiet as I separated from the rest of the group and followed her out of the room into the hall. The entire journey, Diana didn't speak a word. Even Sarah didn't follow her, most likely being told that she wanted to speak to me alone. Diana led me through the castle, up a couple sets of stairs, into what looked to be a royal bedroom with a balcony. Was this a guest room? It was untouched, and I could smell the very faint scent of dust. Why did she bring me here? Where it all began, girl. Diana stepped into the room using her magic to ignite the candelabras and air out the room by opening the balcony window. Before I could ask, however, Diana finally spoke up.
I have to thank you, dear.
For what?
For aiding us in this war. We've been fighting the Demon Lord for so long. We thought the war would never end. As terrible as the circumstance was, if you hadn't been summoned here, we probably would have still been fighting now.
Diana walked to the balcony and leaned against the railing, staring into the dark night sky. The light from the room illuminated her form as she gazed at the stars. Despite the situation around us, the air seemed calm with the faint echo of the celebrations whispering through the night. I walked over and stood beside her, leaning against the balcony, and looked at Diana as she smiled and let out a chuckle.
To be very honest, I didn't expect to ever see you again. After I took your energy that night, I vowed to never deal with humans again. No clairvoyance could have told me about you coming into play in this war.
I wasn't exactly counting on coming here. I still don't want to be here. It was good to see you again, though. Get you back together with your sister. Diana stared wide-eyed at me, a small form of a blush on her cheeks. What? It was true. I was able to see another side of her, one that wasn't cruel or ruthless towards me. I guess it was the real her, and I was happy to find out that she wasn't a terrible person after all. When you were in the human world, I never imagined you to be a nice person. You did everything you could to mess with me and try to coerce the boys to return. Since I came, I know who you really are. You have a good heart, Diana, and I'm glad to know that now. Diana stared for a while before smiling softly, her eyes slightly glossing over in a sense of appreciation. She almost looked like a little girl for half of a second, her face so full of innocence.
And you do as well, my friend.
Diana turned her body to me and held her hand out towards me. I smiled back and took her hand, gently shaking it before pulling her to me, surprising her. I wanted to hug her, so I did. I wrapped my arms around her body and felt her very slowly relax into my embrace. With a small breath and what I assumed to be a purr, Diana wrapped her arms around me and hugged me back. Never would I have imagined embracing Diana and seeing her not as an enemy, but as a friend. It was mind-boggling, but I was glad to know the real Diana now. Diana and I pulled away from each other and smiled before she stepped back to her original spot.
Oh, I had almost forgotten.
I tilted my head at her. What was she talking about? Diana lifted one of her hands towards the sky and waved her hand through the air, making a soft purple mist glow around her fingers. Within seconds, the mist morphed and formed itself into a lavender-colored lily, resting peacefully between Diana's fingers. She brought it down and presented it to me with a kind gaze.
A gift, my dear.
A gift? I slowly took the flower out of Diana's hands and inspected it visually. It was light, but I could feel a soft glow of magic emanating from the stem and petals. The bloom reminded me of a human world lily, but something about it seemed otherworldly.
A flower known only to demons of Lilith. We call it the Flower of Lilith, because these flowers were said to have been created when Lilith first appeared in the Abyssal Plains.
I stared at Diana, not understanding why she was giving me such a gift. She chuckled at my confusion and leaned against the railing, continuing her explanation.
It is also a flower we succubi use when we marry.
Use? What do you mean? Diana chuckled again before she gently took the flower from my hands and tucked it behind my ear. As it settled against my ear, I felt mist circle my head and form into a flower crown of lavender lilies. The way Diana looked at me made me feel like I was in my bridal wear already.
A human you may be, but Lilith would have been proud to see you marrying one of her own. These flowers represent her blessing, and may only crown the worthy.
I felt a blush run across my cheeks. This was a blessing? I slowly reached up and ran my fingers along the flower crown, adorning my head, feeling the soft petals against my fingertips. They were almost pulsing with energy. I felt both flattered and honored that a simple flower felt that I was worthy enough to crown my head. Diana let out a sigh and looked back to the sky, making me do the same. One would have expected the sky to be full of smoke or smell of a war's aftermath, but the sky was clear and fresh air drifted through my nose as I inhaled. It was indeed another world, and tonight was my last night in it.
Well, you did it! Congratulations! Yes! You've made it to the end of your story! I have to say, I am very surprised at how it turned out.
Oh yeah, you're a thing. You want to run down how everything ended up for me, girl?
Nevertheless, I'm glad things worked out in the end, whether it was for the better or otherwise. I mean, who would have thought that Diana's own sister was the one that brought you to the demon world? It's a small universe, isn't it? However, your love came through in the end. With your strength, Erik was finally able to defeat Oribel and send her to the afterlife, where she belonged. Anyways, you've been through a lot, so why don't we skip to... Huh? You want to know what happened after the war? Well, I mean, I guess I could tell you. After the war was finished, the entire rebellion celebrated. Word spread far and wide about the rebellion's success, and soon every kingdom in the Abyssal Plains had become united with the new authority. You would think demons would be more hostile towards each other, being demons and all, but the threat of the Demon Lord was what brought the entire world together. The entire world united under one banner, the Lilith Crest. Diana became the sovereign of the entire plane, accepted and loved by practically everyone because of her devotion to the world and her bravery in the war.
Phew, okay, so they didn't go through with their assassination attempt.
Sero, as devoted as ever, remained by her side as her loyal bodyguard.
Get together, you two, come on.
Diana became one of the most beloved rulers in all of Demon World history. Her natural heart of gold led her to lead the world to a prosperous future, one filled with peace and happiness. The other rebel leaders supported her, eventually changing the caste system of the world and slowly working their way towards a plane as equal and peaceful as it could be. Diana had her suspicions, of course, as any monarch would, but if they had any sort of bad thoughts about her before, they certainly didn't during the recreation of the world. And I believe that is everything that happened after, well, except for your story anyway. Erik and you returned home, and since everything was taken care of before he found you, you got ready for the actual wedding.
Woohoo!
Huh? How do I know? Well, I have my ways. Maybe you should check it out.
I will one day. Click. Now that I was unhindered by a spirit I couldn't control, I was able to finally move on and say yes to Erik with every ounce of my heart in our wedding vows. My entire being became light as I watched this expression melt into endless joy at my vows to him. Our kiss was as magical as a fairy tale prince and princess kiss, glowing in positive and hopeful energy as the people who watched cheered in congratulations. I could go on and on about the wedding and the honeymoon, but honestly, after the war, I was more concerned of living my life afterwards. Our lives escalated to new heights after we officially became husband and wife. Erik started a chain of suit shops and had become a very powerful man in the fashion business industry. It was rather hilarious to see him square up James every fitting he needed with a smirk of equal standing to his once upper-tier brother. As for me, I began to go through my own success in life, dedicating myself to becoming exactly what I wanted to be. After all, my husband had made a name for himself in the fashion world. If I put the same amount of work in as I did in the demon world, then I was going to be okay. However, there was never a day that went by that I didn't think about what was happening in the Abyssal Plains. It was a heavy chapter of my life, one that tested the love between me and Erik. To think that I was under the influence of a child who needed to be set free still astounded me to no end. For a moment, I almost believed that I was pregnant instead. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. Still, I was confident that we would get through it and stay together no matter what came our way. Demon, devil, spirit, it didn't matter to us. We were unstoppable together. The faint memory of my own power slightly tingled through me every time I grew confident, eagerly reminding me that I had strength of my own. I would never let anyone... not anybody. I would never let anyone come between me and Erik ever again. The thoughts of it all echoed in my mind as I sat in bed, looking up at the ceiling with a wide smile on my face. Despite the dangers being real, the war was an adventure, fun to look back upon in my memories. I took in a breath and let out a sigh. Leaning back against the bedpost and closing my eyes. I was at peace and everything was alright.
Princess?
Hello? I just realized, like, I think 80%, if not 90% of all of your CGs in this route were shirtless. Get a shirt, my dude. Ah. You own a suit shop. You should be able to make yourself plenty of shirts. I opened my eyes at the sound of my pet name, looking up to see Erik at the door, smiling at me and holding a plate of food. Unlike the demon world, this world had the makings of pastries, eggs, bacon, and sausage, and other delicious concoctions made for the early morning. As I took in the sight of all of my favorite foods on the plate in Erik's hand, I licked my lips and let out a happy hum. Hey, that looks delicious.
And it's all for you.
That's a lot of food. I was squealing internally, feeling a bit spoiled at the treatment he was giving me. As he walked over and sat on the edge of the bed, Erik handed me the plate and watched as I accepted it and took a bite of what he offered, groaning at the amazing taste. With a smile, I took some of it onto the fork that was on the plate and offered it to Erik, seeing him stare at me in slight surprise before smiling and taking the bite, licking his lips after. Thank you, Erik. You spoil me.
Anything for you, my sweet princess.
I giggled at the name, nuzzling Erik's hand as it came up to caress my cheek lovingly. His hands were always so soft and warm, perfect to hold me and make me feel loved and safe. I opened an eye to look up at him cutely, seeing him blush with a smile of his own.
I would happily do anything for you.
Anything?
Anything. Just name it.
I cupped his hand and gently placed a kiss over his palm, feeling him stare in surprise at the gesture. I could almost hear the blush on his face intensifying before I even looked back at him to confirm it. He was red as an apple. Perfect. I nuzzled his hand, almost laying my head on it. Be with me forever? It took a small, cute moment for Erik to regain his composure before nodding, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear.
Forever. And always.
Hold me every day and every night?
As close as I can hold you to me.
Sweet waves of joy rushed through me every answer he gave, confirming his devotion and love for me. I was so lucky to have him as my own, and I could tell that he believed himself to be the lucky one. In honesty, we were both the lucky ones, perfectly blending together and devoting ourselves to each other without second thoughts. We proved it in the demon world, and we would prove it for the rest of our lives. I gently pulled Erik towards me, moving the plate between us to the nightstand, smiling as he came close before capturing his lips with mine in a loving kiss. He was definitely surprised, but it wasn't long before he began to kiss back just as passionately. The gentle taste of roses and rain always made me feel at peace, and I always managed to find it on Erik's lips. He was my perfect prince, and I was his loving princess. Our mansion was a castle, and the human world was our kingdom to explore. What story could have been better? As we gently pulled away, we gazed into each other's eyes, becoming lost in them. All I could see in his purple irises were waves of love and care, filling my heart with everlasting peace. I began to wonder what he saw in my eyes. Whatever it was, he became entranced and could do nothing but wrap his free arm around me, pulling me to him lovingly.
Everything in my life belongs to you. My heart, my body, my soul, everything. I swear to give you everything I am, and love you until the end of time. Nothing will tear me away from you.
Erik. With a tender kiss on my forehead, Erik's expression softened to a gaze of deep love.
I love you, princess. I love you so much.
I believed every word. I let his words embed themselves into my heart, and I would remember them forever. As Erik kissed me again, locking lips with mine, he sealed his words. I would love him and continue to hold him close for the rest of my life. Nothing would be able to tear me away from him any longer. And that was my perfect happily ever after. Hopelessly devoted to you. That was really cute. Got my achievement. That was really, really sweet. I really liked that. wasn't as intense as James's route, which was nice. And I'm glad the whole Oribel Diana thing got sorted out at the end. The only thing I'm a little disappointed by, maybe it's just a personal thing. I was kind of really hoping that Angel was gonna say that she was pregnant at the end of this, because that was like a thing that they made a big deal of halfway through the story. It's like, he just wants to expand his legacy with you. And she alluded to it a little bit at the end, but not as much as I would have liked. Like, I would have liked that to have been clarified a little bit. Like, he's like, I don't want to expand my legacy. I just want to have a family with you, or something to that effect anyway. But that's just a little niggling thing. Otherwise, I really, really enjoyed it. Erik is as sweet as ever, and I will always love him forever and always. And that's all there is to it, gosh darn it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you very much for watching. Now that we got the sweet ending, though, it is time to move on to bad ends. And I think he has 2. Yeah, according to my notes, he's got 2 bad endings, so we're gonna do that next time. So hopefully I'll see you there for that, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I will see you later.